Hello all you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and as I've said many before on lists such as these, making movies is incredibly hard work. Not only do you have to balance the temperaments of, well, let's just say, creative individuals, the talent that you have employed, but you've also got to make sure that the script is fine, that the movie sets look good, that somebody's not stealing all of the pie when it comes to lunch. Well, seriously, where does it go? I turn my back and the crumble's gone. Fuming. And anyway, that's before you even get to cutting the film together, because you might find that you've got to do some reshoots to get things looking ship shape. And while it would definitely be at the top of the list of things that people don't want to do, reshoots are an unfortunate inevitability of the industry. And you know what? As much as we like to lambaste this as being a sign that the film is not going to be good, sometimes last-minute reshoots, well, they save movies. They make them into the classics that we know them today. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 doomed movies that were saved by last-minute reshoots. Number 10, All the Money in the World. Back in 2017, one thing above all else was set to completely destroy the release of All the Money in the World, and it would require extensive reshoots. Months before the movie had a chance to release, allegations surfaced alleging sexual misconduct from the film's star, Kevin Spacey. He was playing one of the main characters, and so all of his scenes were already in the can. The film was pretty much good to go, but the allegations put a stop on the whole production. The studio realized that it wasn't going to be a wise financial decision to move forward with Spacey, so they removed him entirely from the film. This all happened 2 months before the scheduled release date, which left director Ridley Scott in a bit of a pickle. Spacey had already filmed all of his scenes, but that didn't matter anymore. Scott cut him out entirely and had Christopher Plummer come in to replace him. And Plummer not only knocked out the entire shoot in only 9 days, he absolutely knocked it out of the park as well in terms of quality. He saved the film, and Mr. Plummer even managed to receive a nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the Academy Awards for only 9 days of work. Now that is bloody amazing. Number 9, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Stanley Kubrick is a legendary director, and he rarely made changes to his visions when putting a film together. He was one of the most meticulous people working within the business, so when he decided to change and reshoot something, it wasn't only rare, it would have definitely been for a good reason. For Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, Kubrick ran into a problem right at the end. He intended to end the movie with a massive pie fight, which would have broken out in the war room, and it was meant to be a way of showcasing the ridiculous nature of the satire. But you know what? He shot the scene, but he didn't like what he had when it was finished. Everyone involved was supposed to be throwing pies as seriously as possible, but the actors couldn't stop laughing. They were clearly having fun, and Kubrick wasn't having any of it. He cut and burned the negatives, which is how he always handled unused footage, and he completely reshot the ending of the movie. He later described the pie fight as a disaster of Homeric proportions. It was far too silly for the movie that handled subtle humor so well, so all in all, it was a good thing that Kubrick changed it. Number 8, World War Z. World War Z's production was plagued with problems, and there was a point where it actually looked like it was never going to see the light of day. Production delays and constant issues on set almost killed the entire movie, but it was saved at the 11th hour thanks to some reshoots. Now, the film's first cut was, if we're being honest, garbage, and the studio executives who saw it were not impressed. The film star and executive producer Brad Pitt called it atrocious, and the only thing that they could do was order some reshoots. The reshoots went on for 7 weeks, which pushed back the scheduled release date. After that, the third act was completely rewritten, so more reshoots followed then. By the time that they were finished reshooting the movie, the production budget had ballooned beyond $200 million. That's an insane amount of reshoots, but you know what? They effectively reshot much of the movie. Nearly every scene that comes after Pitt's character boards the plane was changed from the original cut. He originally landed in Russia, and his wife was forced into becoming a, well, sex slave to protect herself and her daughter. The film concluded before he could make it back to reunite with his family, which would have set up for a sequel. Fortunately, they changed everything about that. And you know what? It's definitely been seen as a good thing, as it holds the record for being the highest grossing zombie movie ever made. So even if you didn't like the film, in terms of monetary sense, it made sense. Number 7, Star Wars Rogue One. I feel like I just want to play the entirety of Darth Vader's ending sequence here. I mean, whoa. it still sends chills down my spine. It is possibly one of the most perfect Star Wars moments ever in the entire franchise. And that was all a reshoot. It wasn't actually intended to be in the movie. Rogue One was originally meant to end after the plans were safely beamed to the ship, and the only thing that Vader was going to be involved in is just saying he pops in for a quick visit and doesn't find the plans. That was all that he was originally going to be used for. My God, I am glad that they reshot this because, once again, that was just epic. Number 6, Deadpool 2. The first Deadpool movie broke not only box office records, but also the idea that a superhero movie didn't need a PG-13 rating. It was all but guaranteed to get a sequel, which dropped a few years after the first. But just because Deadpool did well, that didn't mean that its sequel was without problems. When it was shown to test audiences, it tested far below expectations. The result of those screenings weren't detailed to the public, but one viewer described the plot on Twitter as lacking and that Vanessa's character was utterly wasted. So the crew got back together and fixed these various problems. The only detail of the test screening confirmed by the studio revolved around a complaint that 2 characters had too little screen time. So more scenes were added to solve this problem. The new content extended the scenes featuring Josh Brolin's Cable and Zazie Beetz' Domino. Both Domino and Cable were standouts in that film, and the changes helped boost test screenings beyond expectations, likely saving the film from what would have been a rather underwhelming premiere. Number 5, Bumblebee. By the time that Bumblebee was released, audiences in the West were nearly burned out by Michael Bay's Transformer films. Fortunately, Bumblebee was actually a surprising addition that set itself apart from the main entries of that franchise. It told a great little story that introduced new characters and elements that supported the overall Transformers franchise. The final product was fun and exciting, but it nearly didn't make it to theaters in its final form. A few months before it was set to release, feedback from test audiences sent the cast and crew scrambling for reshoots, requiring numerous character changes. John Cena played Agent Burns, and in the final cut, he was funny and approachable. But he wasn't always like that though, and test audiences really did not like him at all. He was much more serious and cutthroat, but more than that, he was hostile towards the Transformers. This was due to having lost someone close to him to a Transformer, but all of that was axed from the final cut. Reshoots helped Cena redefine the character into one far more charismatic and approachable, which, you know what, he is in real life, so why make him play anything else? Number 4, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. Looking back at Anchorman, it's hard to imagine that the film that helped boost Will Ferrell's movie career into overdrive almost didn't exist. After all, it was a perfectly made comedy classic, and there's so much about the movie that was done right. But you know what? There's a good reason for that, and that is reshoots. When the original cut of the film was shown to audiences, it failed miserably. The plot was vastly different from the finished one and involved the kidnapping of Veronica by a terrorist group called the Alarm Clock. Ron and his buddies banded together to rescue her, and that ended the movie. The test audiences absolutely hated it for the ridiculous plot, and apparently it wasn't funny in the least. DreamWorks demanded rewrites and reshoots to save Anchorman from becoming another crap comedy that nobody would bother to see. The ending was completely changed, and everything about the kidnapping and the alarm clock ended up on the cutting room floor. This eliminated performances by Amy Poehler, Justin Long, Stephen Root, Neil Flynn, Kevin Corrigan, Maya Rudolph, Chuck D, and Tara Subkoff, which is a shame, but you know what? It was probably for the best given how poorly the first cut was received. Number 3, The Big Sleep. The Big Sleep introduced the cinematic world to Detective Philip Marlowe, a character who appeared in radio, film, and television for decades. Humphrey Bogart's Marlowe starred opposite Lauren Bacall as Vivian Rutledge. It's a classic film that centers on the process of criminal investigation, not its results. But around the time The Big Sleep was getting ready for its release, the public was fascinated with the 2 stars actually having a romantic interest in each other, which created a problem and an opportunity. The film's original cut didn't feature much romantic interest between the 2 on screen, but you know what? That wouldn't do. To take advantage of the public's interest in the 2 stars, numerous scenes were rewritten and reshot, which produced a movie that was far different than the first cut. That 1945 cut was eventually released in 1997, and the 2 cuts are substantially different. Interestingly, the reshoots were only possible because World War II came to an end. Warner Brothers held off on releasing The Big Sleep so the studio could push out the war movies it had ready to go before the interest died down. Since The Big Sleep's story wasn't time sensitive, the studio sat on it and had ample time to reshoot numerous scenes, including the ending. Number 2. Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road is a movie that surprised and delighted fans by injecting something new into a franchise that was all but dead and buried. The film was stuck in development hell for years and suffered from some serious production delays and disruptions, suggesting that it might never see the light of day. Fortunately, it did end up making its way to theaters, but it nearly didn't, thanks to the fact that it ended up wrapping without a beginning or an end. This was due to the fact that the budget was exploding way beyond what the studio was willing to pay. The president of Warner Brothers flew out to Namibia and told director George Miller, "The camera will stop on December the 8th no matter what you've got, and that's the end of it." There wasn't anything that Miller could do, so he wrapped filming and went into post-production without his bookended scenes. None of the Citadel scenes had been shot at this point, and they were vital to the story. Fortunately, a changing of the guard at Warner Brothers earned Miller and company a second chance. They were allowed to go to Australia to reshoot several scenes as well as the beginning and the ending. And number 1, Back to the Future. Back to the Future is arguably one of the best movies to come out of the 1980s, and it was a huge success for Michael J. Fox. Of course, Fox wasn't in the movie originally, as the role of Marty McFly first belonged to Eric Stoltz. Granted, the production initially wanted Fox to star in the movie, but he wasn't able due to his filming obligations with Family Ties. Unable to do anything about that, Stoltz was brought in, and he got to work filming many of the iconic scenes that would ultimately go to Fox. Filming continued for 5 weeks, but ultimately director Robert Zemeckis didn't like what he was seeing. It wasn't that he was a bad actor, far from it, he just couldn't deliver the comedic performances that the filmmaker originally envisioned Fox doing, so unfortunately he was let go. A deal was struck and Fox was brought onto the set to shoot his scenes around his Family Ties schedule. Bringing him on required reshooting everything that they had previously done with Stoltz, which was rather a lot. In the end though, it is hard to imagine anyone but Fox in the role, so the reshoots were definitely worth it. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 doomed movies saved by last-minute reshoots. I hope you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. If you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice. It's my personal gaming channel where I stream every single Wednesday and Sunday. It'd be great to see you over there. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.